The polished copper backsplash caught my reflection as I adjusted my veil, the intricate lace carefully draping over my shoulders. I had spent months restoring this antique metal by hand, coaxing it back to a mirror finish. That gleaming surface revealed something else entirely. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, standing silently behind me. She didn't notice my reflection. She only noticed my champagne glass. In a precise, practiced motion, she tipped a tiny vial into it, 3 clear drops falling silently into the bubbly liquid. I didn't react. I didn't turn. I simply waited, letting her finish greeting the senator's wife before. I calmly swapped our glasses. The poison was now in her hand, and the real drama of the evening had just begun. Most brides would have run, screamed, or collapsed in panic. I did none of that. Panic is a luxury I couldn't afford. I'm a restoration architect. I spend my days calculating stresses and weaknesses in buildings, preventing structural failure. In that moment, I felt the weight of static load, the silent, immense pressure a beam bears, just before it decides whether to hold up a roof or snap in half. My pulse was steady, my mind clear. I returned to the head table with measured steps, my heels tapping a deliberate rhythm against the polished hardwood, sitting beside Ethan, my husband, a pediatric surgeon, who saved lives daily but couldn't yet see the danger in his own family. I felt his hand brush mine under the table. He whispered I looked beautiful, unaware of the threat hovering only 10 feet away. I watched Eleanor take her seat, flawless as ever, laughing with my parents, her smile hiding the venom beneath. Her eyes, dark and cold, flicked toward me in a silent challenge. She believed she controlled this room. She believed she had engineered my downfall. I sipped my water slowly, deliberately, tasting the cold clarity it brought. She drank the champagne, oblivious to the swap. For 2 years, she had tried to bulldoze me, undermine my work, and convince my husband I wasn't worthy. But she had overlooked a crucial detail. I understand structure. I know where weaknesses lie and when they are about to fail. I set my glass down and smiled, letting her believe she had the upper hand. To understand why I didn't confront her immediately, you need to know the architecture of our conflict. This wasn't a sudden act of hatred. It was the culmination of a carefully orchestrated campaign. From the moment Ethan introduced us, I was an anomaly in the Sterling world. New money, hands rough with work, disrupting the pristine order they had cultivated for generations. Eleanor's contempt was subtle but deliberate. At our first estate inspection, she looked at my work boots, dust-covered hands, and dismissed me with a single cold, "Oh." No smiles. No welcoming words, just structural undermining. Over time, she manipulated invitations, ignored achievements, and introduced me as a temporary fixture, a project manager, rather than a licensed professional with degrees. Her strategies were small, persistent cracks aimed at destabilizing me. The real breaking point came 6 months before the wedding. I was alone in her library when she slid a creamy envelope across the mahogany desk. Inside was a cashier's check for $100,000. She called it a severance package. "You're a lovely girl, Olivia," she said. "But let's be realistic. You build things, we own things. You'll never belong at this table. This is just to save you from embarrassment." I looked at the check, more money than my parents made in years. I didn't react emotionally. I slid it back, saying calmly, "I think you're underestimating the cost of labor, Eleanor. I'm not for sale." Her eyes shifted in that instant, recognition that I wasn't a nuisance but a threat. From then on, every insult, every slight, every calculated act was part of an escalating campaign to undermine me, a carefully planned extinction burst. The week before the wedding was the climax of her efforts. She called the florist to cancel the orders, claimed a car accident, inspected my bridal suite, and damaged my veil. All attempts to derail the day. I repaired the lace with gold thread, a technique from my restoration work, and kept it to myself, knowing that telling Ethan would lead to gaslighting and denial. Seeing her prepare the vial at the reception tied the narrative together. Her actions weren't random. They were the final detonation of her 2-year campaign, a destructive crescendo aimed at humiliating and harming me. But just as a skilled architect predicts failure, I anticipated her moves. As Ethan concluded his speech, applause ringing through the hall, the room fell silent for her moment. Eleanor rose, silver gown shimmering, glass raised high. She smiled, projecting perfection, turning the poisoned champagne into a performance. "Marriage," she began, voice flawless, "is about partnership, understanding, and trust." Her gaze locked on me at the word trust. She drank, convinced of her victory, and returned to conversation, triumphant in her deceit. I remained still, counting seconds, my hands folded, observing the precision of her plan. The groaning began just after 2 minutes. Eleanor faltered mid-sentence, face turning gray. She tried to rise, gravity dictating otherwise, clutching the tablecloth and toppling a centerpiece. Chaos erupted around us, but I stayed composed, watching as her carefully planned humiliation unraveled. The paramedics arrived swiftly, Ethan on the floor with her, commanding the scene with professional detachment. I coordinated silently, ensuring the path was clear, the chaos managed. The small glass vial fell from her bag, spilling onto the floor alongside a folded piece of cream-colored stationery. I picked it up, recognizing the handwriting, knowing its contents before opening. Ethan took the cream-colored stationery from my hand, his face a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. He scanned the words, and the room seemed to fade around him. Eleanor's plan was laid bare in elegant, looping script. She had drafted an apology speech before the reception, a narrative framing her attack as my breakdown. Every detail, every humiliating moment she had engineered, had a purpose. Her intention was clear: destroy my reputation while making it look like my fault. For a brief moment, I watched Ethan's expression shift. The warmth in his eyes, the love that had guided him all these years, hardened into a clinical clarity. He realized the truth. The danger wasn't some random misstep. It was deliberate, orchestrated, and personal. He folded the note, placing it carefully in his pocket. Without looking at me, he turned to the paramedics, issuing precise instructions. Check the vial, identify the substance, and call the police. His voice was steady, detached, carrying the authority of someone trained to respond to life-and-death crises. I observed quietly as the paramedics worked, Eleanor barely conscious, her body responding violently to the sedative mixed into the champagne. Guests were panicked, screaming, and shoving each other for space, but I stayed focused. Every action, every command had to be measured. This was not the time for emotion. It was a time for control. I guided the wedding coordinator to clear a path, instructed the DJ to stop the music, and ensured that Ethan had room to manage his mother's vitals. In those tense minutes, the weight of the moment pressed down, not unlike the load I calculate when assessing ancient beams. Every decision, every step, determined whether chaos would spiral further or if the situation could be stabilized. My professional instincts, honed over years of restoring crumbling structures, were the only thing keeping me from being swept into the emotional turmoil. Once Eleanor was stabilized and loaded onto the ambulance, the reality of the situation shifted. Her beaded clutch, which had fallen during the struggle, lay open on the floor, revealing the small glass vial. It was empty, but its presence, combined with the note, was damning. Ethan didn't hesitate. He instructed the paramedics to preserve everything for evidence and directed the attending officer to secure the scene. Officer Cardona, who had seen enough high society crises to last a decade, took my statement methodically. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I delivered the facts with precision, my memory sharp and unclouded by the theatrics surrounding me. I even referenced the security footage I had retrieved before the ambulance left, knowing exactly which cameras would show the interaction with the vial. Within minutes, the evidence was compiled: time-stamped video, the pre-written note, and eyewitness accounts. The proof of intent was undeniable. Ethan emerged from the hospital room later, looking 10 years older than he had that morning, his surgeon's composure intact, but his face carrying the weight of realization. My mother is awake, he told the officer. She wants to make a statement. Officer Cardona's eyebrows rose. Did she confess? Ethan's laugh was dry, humorless. No, she claims she did it to protect me. She says Olivia is a gold digger ruining the Sterling bloodline. And I'll thank her one day. The absurdity of her reasoning didn't weaken Ethan's resolve. He handed the officer the folded stationery, the evidence of premeditation. She didn't just try to harm my wife, he said. She planned a character assassination, drafted it in advance, and intended to manipulate the room into believing I was blind to her actions. This proves intent. His father, seated with his head in his hands, murmured, "She's your mother." But Ethan cut him off, his voice slicing through the tension. "No, she is a criminal. If you finance her defense, you are complicit. I am pressing charges and requesting an immediate restraining order for Olivia and me." He signed the statement with the same precision that had guided him in the OR countless times. In that act, he wasn't just choosing me, He was severing a lifelong bond with a toxic origin. The following months were a blur of legal proceedings, but justice moved with surprising swiftness. Eleanor faced charges for aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. Her lawyer attempted to argue diminished capacity, but the pre-written note demolished that defense. You cannot claim temporary insanity when the plan is drafted days in advance. Her sentence was clear: 24 months, a time to reflect on the meticulous cruelty she had attempted to inflict. Ethan and I made a conscious decision not to move into the Sterling estate. Instead, we purchased a fixer-upper on the other side of the city. It had good bones but required work, much like our relationship. We approached it with patience, care, and meticulous attention to detail. Every repair was a lesson in trust. Every improvement a testament to our resilience. I found solace in restoration work, particularly with delicate Japanese ceramics. One afternoon, I sat at our kitchen table, repairing a broken bowl using kanugi, a technique where cracks are filled with lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The philosophy behind it resonated deeply. The break is not a flaw to hide, but a mark of strength. The gold lines reflected sunlight, highlighting imperfections and creating beauty where there was once damage. Our marriage, tested by treachery and deceit, was similar. The ordeal with Eleanor had not left us fragile. It had fused us together in a way few couples experience. We learned to recognize each other's blind spots, to anticipate threats, and to trust with a depth born from surviving calculated adversity. Trauma did not leave a scar. It left a seam of gold, visible and unbreakable. Even in the quiet moments, I could see the parallels between my craft and our life. Restoration required patience, observation, and a willingness to confront weaknesses without fear. Marriage, after surviving Eleanor's attempts to destroy it, required the same. Every crack we encountered was an opportunity to reinforce. Every challenge a chance to solidify our foundation. And while the world outside our home continued in chaos, our home remained a sanctuary. It was imperfect, jagged, and yet profoundly resilient. In those moments, repairing ceramics, arranging flowers, or simply sharing a quiet dinner, I understood the real meaning of strength. It wasn't the absence of threat or failure. It was the ability to withstand, to adapt, and to emerge more beautiful for having been tested. Eleanor's absence was a constant reminder of the consequences of cruelty. She had attempted to orchestrate my humiliation, to assert dominance through fear and manipulation, but she underestimated the precision, intelligence, and composure of someone trained to recognize weaknesses and address them without panic. Our life moved forward deliberately, like a carefully restored structure, methodical, deliberate, and fortified by experience. Each day, each repair, each shared glance reaffirmed the lesson we had learned on our wedding day: that integrity, preparation, and unwavering support could overcome even the most calculated acts of malice. Life after the chaos of the wedding became a study in resilience. Ethan and I settled into our fixer-upper, each room a canvas for repair, each corner a testament to patience. Unlike the Sterling estate, which gleamed with inherited perfection, our home had character, fractured walls, uneven floors, but undeniable potential. Every nail hammered, every beam reinforced, reminded me of the lessons Eleanor had inadvertently taught us. Strength emerges from confronting weakness, and beauty can be found in imperfection. We approached our days deliberately. Mornings began with coffee at the sunlit kitchen table, discussing plans for the house or our careers, finding joy in mundane details. Afternoons were spent repairing or restoring, whether it was antique furniture, damaged ceramics, or worn hardwood floors. The process became almost meditative, each careful motion echoing the precision I had relied on during the wedding crisis. Life felt measured, intentional, and secure. Yet even in this calm, the memory of Eleanor lingered. Not as fear, but as a benchmark, a reminder of what calculated cruelty could look like, and how to respond with calm strategy. The news of her conviction came quietly. The formalities finalized while we sat at the kitchen table. 24 months for aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. Her carefully orchestrated plan undone by the one element she never anticipated: foresight. Justice had a rhythm as precise as any architectural calculation, and for once it worked in our favor. Our relationship flourished in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Trust became more than an abstract concept. It became a living framework. Ethan and I anticipated each other's moves, understood the subtle signals, and protected one another from potential harm. The trauma of the wedding had fused us, not fractured us. There was no residual doubt, no lingering anxiety, only clarity. Each decision we made was rooted in knowledge of one another's strengths and vulnerabilities. I often reflected on the kinugi technique I used for my ceramics, the Japanese method of filling broken lines with gold. Our marriage had developed similar seams, cracks filled with trust, reinforced by experience, visible and celebrated rather than hidden. The imperfections told a story of survival, adaptation, and enduring love. I realized that no perfect marriage exists. Only marriages tested by adversity can achieve that rare, unshakable bond. Even ordinary moments became meaningful. One evening, we hosted friends for dinner, and I noticed Ethan subtly steering conversation away from contentious topics, a small protective gesture he had learned instinctively. I caught his eye and smiled, acknowledging the silent understanding between us. It was not about control. It was about mutual care. The same principle that guides restoration work: stabilize the structure, anticipate stress, and prevent collapse. The lessons extended beyond the walls of our home. I became more discerning about the people we allowed into our lives. Friendships were no longer casual. They were intentional. I recognized early signs of manipulation, entitlement, and cruelty, learned from Eleanor's example. It wasn't paranoia, it was prudence. The skill of observing, analyzing, and responding appropriately. Just as I assessed an old beam for hidden weaknesses, I assessed relationships for integrity. Ethan and I also took deliberate steps in our careers. My restoration work expanded, not just in scale but in precision, taking on projects that challenged my skills and demanded full attention to structural detail. Ethan continued saving lives, but he now understood the importance of vigilance beyond the hospital, awareness that danger sometimes comes from within, from those closest to you. Together, we built a rhythm of mutual respect, foresight, and shared responsibility. The Sterling estate faded from daily life, but the lessons remained. I often revisited the wedding in my mind, not as a source of trauma, but as a case study in strategy, patience, and composure. Eleanor had attempted to engineer chaos, but her failure was instructive. She had demonstrated how a meticulously planned act of malice could be neutralized with calm foresight, observation, and understanding of weak points. In the end, she had become an unwitting teacher. Occasionally, I worked on personal projects at the kitchen table, repairing ceramics, reupholstering furniture, or restoring heirlooms. The gold seams in the ceramics reminded me of the strength that emerges from adversity, the beauty in resilience, and the value of patience. Each finished piece symbolized the marriage we had built: imperfect, resilient, and enduring. The breakage had not destroyed us, it had elevated us. Our friends often commented on the serene energy in our home, unaware of the calculated chaos we had survived. I would smile, knowing that beneath the calm surface lay lessons hard-earned. Trust, vigilance, and preparation were the cornerstones of our life. We had emerged from the storm not weaker, but stronger, bonded by experience and reinforced by understanding. Even 12 months after the wedding, the memory of that day remained vivid, not as trauma, but as proof of our capability. The poisoned champagne, the planned humiliation, and the attempted character assassination had failed spectacularly. Every measured decision, every calculated step, had turned a potential disaster into a moment of triumph. Ethan's unwavering presence, combined with my strategic thinking, had neutralized Eleanor's attempt to dominate our lives. In the quiet evenings, as the sun filtered through our newly restored windows, I often reflected on how far we had come. Our marriage was not a flawless veneer, but a living structure, fortified by experience. Each challenge faced and overcome added to the strength, each crack filled with gold, representing resilience, patience, and trust. We no longer feared adversity. We welcomed it as a test of our commitment and skill. And so, in our home full of light, imperfect surfaces, and carefully repaired objects, we thrived. The wedding ordeal, once a potential catastrophe, had become the foundation of our strongest bond. We had learned that real strength lies not in avoiding cracks but in reinforcing them, celebrating the seams that make life and love beautiful. As I placed the final touch on a restored ceramic bowl, the gold seams glinting in the late afternoon sun, I felt the fullness of life we had built. Imperfect, jagged, resilient, and unbreakable. Our marriage, like the restored artifacts around us, told a story not of fragility, but of enduring strength. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever challenges arose, we would face them together, measured, prepared, and unshakable.